China, in its international relations with its partners, always talks about win-win. It's a win for China, it's a win for its partners. And in Latin America, that win-win argument was very attractive at the beginning when China came in and began investing in conventional energy. But it's gone sour. The Latin American nations are becoming concerned that win-win means China wins by importing primary products and Latin America wins by importing high-value products. And that's seen in Latin America as unequal, and that's led to an increase in tensions in the relationship between China and Latin America. Now, the reality is much more complex than that, all right? But the perception, okay, is what matters if we want to think about cooperation, and the politics that follow the perceptions matter. Now, a greener energy context creates a different environment for that relationship, and it's an environment that could lead to more cooperation, to less conflict than the trade relationship that's based on conventional energy sources. Why? First of all, it's hard to export energy produced by the Green Revolution across areas, so it wouldn't be the case of Latin America exporting its low-value energy sources and purchasing something else. That's just not going to happen if we're talking about the green energy sources. Non-conventional energy is technology-based. Okay? Technology is not only dynamic, technology, as we just heard, right, depends very much on partnerships. Okay? And some Latin American countries have the requisite science base to partner with Chinese, Japanese, Koreans. I'm sorry to say I have a Sony TV, but okay, so I wouldn't throw Japan out the window yet. But certainly, if you're looking at the major Latin American countries, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, they all have Argentina. They all have a science base that makes them potential partners. Right? Even in countries where the national educational system is not well developed, individual initiative and knowledge is still available and can be tapped into. If we think about, I know shale gas isn't a green technology, but if we think about a number of the green technologies that are being developed around the globe, okay, individual entrepreneurs are very important in that process. It's not just government science projects that are funding this. These are people working out of small labs, out of small enterprises, trying to push the envelope on anodes, on microbiology, etc. So even if we have a country that doesn't have a national educational system that's well developed, there still is entrepreneurship there that can be tapped into. So if China and Latin America come together around these technologies, around the effort to promote these alternative sources of energy, there's the basis for a much greater partnership. Now, that's easy to say. It's hard to implement, all right? And we'll see, I want to go through some of the reasons why it could be possible but difficult, all right? So the Green Revolution depends on science, finance, and support in complementary areas, not just science, all right? We heard earlier the discussion about the financial systems, all right? Finance is very important. So if we look at the Green Revolution, All right, we think about storage devices for solar and wind energy. It's the big problem. We know how to capture solar energy. We don't know how to store it. We know how to capture wind. We don't know how to store it, over a long period of time. Right? So nanotechnology makes contributions in this as we think about how to make smaller batteries. Okay. As we think about how to make more efficient turbines, etc. So nanotechnology, there are innovations in the anode area, not just lithium. The future battery may not be a lithium-based battery. Okay? There are numerous small enterprises working with different kinds of chemical reactions, trying to find a more effective process. Microbiology, there's really interesting things going on in green energy for microbiology from organisms that consume waste that can power an entire city if we could scale it up. Right? So there's a lot there that doesn't require MIT to get through or Peking University. So there's a basis there. Now, the development of these technologies depends on a lot of capital. Okay? One of the things that happens in an innovation economy is the failure rate is very high of enterprises along the way. Now, what does it mean that the failure rate is very high? It means people have put money into it and they've lost. Okay, so if you don't have a financial system or a financial input to feed that system, it's very difficult to move ahead with development. Okay? Even after you've got development, the next challenge is commercialization. Okay? All we have to do is read the science literature and we see there's a number of different ways in which we know already we can generate in particular electricity power. Okay? The problem lies in making it commercial and commercializing it. That goes back to nanotechnology, goes back to a number of things, but that commercialization requires capital. Okay? So we have storage devices, we have finance, public policy is necessary. Public policy, why? One of the problems that we face in moving forward with electrical vehicles is just the whole infrastructure to support electrical vehicles. We already have electrical vehicles that can travel 100 miles in the United States, but we don't have charging stations on every mile or so people could actually charge up. All right, that's an infrastructure problem. It's not a development problem. It's not a commercialization problem. It's an infrastructure problem. So infrastructure, also for recycling. One of the beauties of a lot of the green technology that's out there is that it can contribute on the recycling side, not only to decrease costs. Just think of lithium is recyclable. Oil is not recyclable. To the degree that, yes, you have batteries, the batteries are dead in 10 years, you get rid of the battery, but the lithium you could reuse if you had a recycling infrastructure to do that. That dramatically lowers the cost, okay, and it creates a whole different energy environment than oil that you use up. It also creates a challenge in the business side, because you know how to make money by constantly selling something over and over and over again, right? But when you're recycling, it's a whole different business model for the people who are generating the lithium. Public policy is also important for incorporating the externalities associated with the different options that are out there. We heard earlier about the importance from Anela, the importance of not subsidizing it. One way I think about this is, hydrocarbons are not paying the cost, their true cost, because they've not internalized, public policy has not internalized the externalities associated with the use of hydrocarbons. Okay, so that's a public policy decision. Right? If public policy thinks can be made to incorporate some of that, then it makes green energy more competitive with hydrocarbons, which are hard to beat just on the basis of their own energy power, right? Now, the externalities are not just something that's an issue for hydrocarbons. If you think about solar energy, one of the challenges for solar energy is the impact of solar on the environment around the solar. You think about putting all those panels out there in the desert, what happens? You've got organisms that live under the desert. In the desert that live there because they're used to the heat. You're now creating shade. So this is an environmental issue. You're destroying organisms. You're destroying plant life. You're destroying animal life. Okay, what's the trade-off there? You know, again, if we have appropriate public policy, we can think about those in economic terms. We can debate them in political terms. So for the Green Revolution to really move forward in a big way, we're going to have this interaction between science, finance, and public policy to create an environment that is appropriate for moving forward. Now, Latin America is an interesting place for green energy because it has a lot of the basic natural elements that one would want in terms of green energy. All right? It has wind, it has waves, it has solar, it has mountains, it has arable land for biomass. It's not an accident that Brazil is a leading producer of ethanol from sugarcane. They have a lot of land that they dedicate to sugarcane historically, and they were looking for an alternative use for some of that sugarcane given the price of sugar in world markets. Now, that's, if you will, that's potential inputs into it. But Latin America doesn't use all of these in a very effective or efficient manner. And part of that is a public policy decision on the part of Latin America. And part of that is because Latin America is very attractive for foreign investors to come in on conventionals, because it has oil and it has gas. Okay? If you look at renewable power in Latin America, it looks like it grew pretty significantly from 2007 to 2012. 300% there, but it's still a fraction of the power that's generated in Latin America, even though South America in particular has the potential to be as hydropower focused as Scandinavia. It has that much water, it has that many mountains, etc. Right? But they're not moving in that direction. If we look at that renewable power in Latin America, not only is it relatively low compared to what it should be, but it's poorly distributed. Okay? Most of that power is in Brazil, even though, yes, Brazil's a big country, yes, it's got lots of water, it's got lots of mountains, but so do Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Central America, Mexico. Okay, it's all there, right? Now, the Brazilian share in that power is decreasing over time, partly as a result of, unfortunately, decreased Brazilian emphasis on renewable power outside of hydropower, and increases in other countries' budgets. Chile is beginning to move in this way. But what we can conclude is that Latin America is lagging. Right? It's laggy. It needs help. It needs not only help in terms of providing things, but help in terms of pushing it along. And here's where China could be, China could be a partner. China is developing partnerships with a number of Latin American countries. It picks and chooses, like all countries do. It's been particularly interested in Brazil. because of Brazil's success in ethanol, because Brazil has a educational system that is pushing in this direction, etc. There have been high level as well as university level contacts. I just throw up a couple of things there for you. If you're interested, here's a really nice website that was set up by the Federal University of Rio and Tsinghua University around climate change and technologies. You can access that in Portuguese, English, and I suppose also in Chinese. I don't speak Chinese. But China's also invested in solar farms in Chile, particularly in the north. Chile is a big mining area, very energy intensive, and China has partnered with Chileans to build solar farms there. China is heavily involved with the building of hydropower in Ecuador. The three big dams in Ecuador that are being built with Chinese finance, Chinese construction companies, and Chinese labor. So China is partnering with the Ecuadorian government on hydropower. But even green energy presents challenges for, whoops, I thought I changed this. All right, let me go to global climate governance issues. Brazil and China are both members of BASIC, all right? Brazil, South Africa, India, and China, a group that tries to push forward the conversation at the international level on climate change. Governance is a big topic in China. It's a big topic in Brazil. They don't exactly mean the same things. They don't mean what our South Korean friend just claimed is defined governance. But where China and Brazil do agree is on the insistence that any move forward has to recognize the primacy of national needs. Okay, it can't subject national development, national efforts to international regulations. It also agrees that the state has a guiding role to play. Okay? When Brazil and China talk about global governance, this is what they want to see there. All right? This is different from some of the major conversations that are going on in climate change in Europe, in the United States, which see the importance of international cooperation leading to a decision at the national level not to do certain things. Okay? In the case of Brazil and China, certainly hydropower pops up as a big issue because hydropower is renewable, hydropower is clean to some degree, but then there's a big debate about whether large-scale hydropower is actually worse because of the impact on deforestation, because the impact on silting up of rivers, because the impact of a variety of other things. And then outside of climate, you get the question of its impact not only on the broader environment, but also in the case of Brazil, the impact on indigenous peoples who happen to live in these areas. And that's not part of the climate change discussion, but it's very much a part of the discussion in Brazil. Okay. China and Brazil agree on the equity issue at the global governance discussions. Equity means not just thinking about current and future, but thinking about past. All right, Brazil and China have not been the big contributors in the past, so they want that to be taken into consideration in any future solution to climate change. There's also agreement on raising the issue about compensation for foregone growth for developing countries if climate change solutions impact growth rates. But China and Brazil do have points of disagreement on climate change negotiations. And one of the big points of disagreement is around the question of carbon responsibilities. do the responsibilities, as we heard earlier today, this afternoon, do the responsibilities lie with the producer of the product? Well, we know China doesn't like that view of responsibility because it produces the products for export to not only developed country markets, but Brazil buys a lot of manufactured products from China. So from the Brazilian perspective, if you're taxing the carbon at the consumption stage, Brazil doesn't export a lot of those manufacturers, but it buys a lot of those manufacturers. So Brazil would have to pay that carbon cost. So there's a point where China and Brazil disagree. So let me note that what that suggests is that there's a basis for cooperation, but cooperation's not foregone. It's not just a question of will, and even green energy, although it presents the opportunity for a better relationship between China and Latin America, there are challenges in developing that cooperation. Policy choices are still about the generation of costs and benefits and their distribution. Even if we're talking about environmentally friendly options, about climate change friendly options, etc., there's still costs and benefits generated along the way. Green energy still has its impact on the environment. I already talked about the solar impacts. Hydropower, for many people, is a wonderful option. For a lot of other people, it's a horrible option. So these are not just science questions. They're not just political will questions. They're policy questions. And policy questions require thinking about the points on which the participating parties can coordinate. And that coordination means thinking about the distribution of the costs and benefits associated with that. So, thank you.